Hi guys, Mimi here. So I guess maybe a couple months ago, maybe a month or two ago, I did a video on mistakes that new sewists should avoid, and the video was a big hit. You guys loved it, and I tried to sort of give as much advice as I possibly can to anybody who's just learning to sew. You guys know that I have an online sewing and design school, Sew It Academy, for those who want to learn how to sew. It's sort of in order, right, with a curriculum, and you're sort of going step by step and you're building on your skills, and that's amazing. But there's a lot of you who just want to sort of just wing it and, learn on YouTube and do all these, sort of individual projects, and that's totally cool. But if you are new to sewing, there are things that you should know so that you can avoid getting frustrated. So in the last video I covered, I think the video says 11, but I think I really just covered 10. I don't remember. But in this video, I thought I would jot down some more things that new sewists should avoid. So I have 12 for you today. Some of these to me seem super basic and like common sense, but I've been sewing for so long, so I can totally understand that for somebody who's just learning, and possibly getting frustrated, these things could seriously help you. So some of these are mine. Some of these are notes that I took from you guys who left really great comments for me in the last video. Super encouraging to each other, which I always love, makes me very happy. So I thought, let me do 12 more mistakes that you guys as new sewists should avoid. Okay, so the first one is stop staring at your needle. It ain't going nowhere. When I used to, very long ago, when I used to do one-on-one classes, the very first thing I would notice is that students were like dead set on watching the needle. And I realized that they would veer off course, right? When you're trying to sew a straight stitch and you're staring at your needle, you're gonna veer off. Your fabric is gonna start going like this. And so I know that it made sense why they were staring at the needle. So I had to retrain them to look at the side of the fabric and the seam guide where you want your fabric to be versus staring at your needle, because your needle, like I said, it ain't going nowhere. It's not moving, it's just going up and down. So you need to focus on your fabric and making sure that the fabric is staying along the line that you're using, whether the seam allowance is 3/8 or 1/2 inch or 5/8, whatever it is. That's what you're looking at. You're not looking at your needle. So if you find yourself veering off course as you're sewing, you're probably staring at your needle. So stop it. The next thing is slow down. You'd be amazed how many people start learning to sew and they got their foot on the foot pedal and they start veering off course and they don't know what to do. And I'm just like, yo, stop. Take your foot off of the pedal. Just like when you're driving a car. If you feel you're going too fast, take your foot off the pedal. If you're veering off, take your foot off the pedal. If you are getting sort of frustrated or you can't keep your fabric where you need it to be, or you're getting nervous, or you need to go around a corner, whatever it is, just slow down. If you have a sewing machine with speed control, that's even better, right? Because you can set it to the slowest speed so that you're not accidentally going too fast, because just like when you're learning to drive, you have to sort of get that little groove, right? Your foot on the pedal and sort of know you don't want to be going like this, right? When you first start sewing, which happens a lot because you have to get used to it. So it's not a big deal, but just slow down and take your foot off of the pedal. Okay. 3, don't go rogue. Read the back of the envelope for fabric and yardage. Okay. The back of the pattern envelopes give you all the information that you need about how much fabric you need based on your size, what notions you need. Do you need a zipper? Do you need an invisible zipper? Do you need buttons? Do you need elastic? Do you need interfacing? Do you need ribbon? Do you need all kinds of stuff? So the back of the envelope tells you that. A lot of times I will see people ask me, Mimi, how much fabric do I need for this pattern? And I'm so confused because I'm like, the pattern envelope gives you all that information. But if you're not used to sewing with patterns, maybe you don't know that. Maybe you don't know to look at the back and see all of the information that's there. But most importantly, don't don't just go buying random fabric for a garment. That's what I mean by don't go rogue. So the pattern envelope in the back gives you fabric suggestions. These are fabrics that are going to work well for this garment, meaning it has the right weight, the right flowiness, the right whatever it is that you need for this, project that you're making. So if it's like a woven dress and you go buy a knit fabric, or if it's a knit dress and you're going and buying woven fabric because you don't understand fabrics, then you're going to run into a problem. So if you are just starting out, don't go all on your own, willy-nilly, buying whatever fabric you like and trying to match it to a pattern. Instead, just get the pattern and get the recommended fabrics on that pattern. Now, here's something that you might not know, is on the back of the pattern envelope, it's going to give you something like twill. But then you go to the fabric store and you might not see that specific word on there, right? So you have to learn all these different things. What is a bottom weight? What is a dress weight? What are your silkies? What are your linens? What are your cottons? But if you're stuck and you're not sure, when you go to the fabric store, just take the pattern envelope, pull it out of the drawer, or if you have it with you, or write it down or take a picture of it or whatever it is, and ask for help, because they'll be able to at least guide you in the direction of where those specific fabrics are, or something similar that will work the same way. What else? Okay, YouTube is fantastic. I learn all kinds of stuff. When I want to learn something, I go to YouTube. Everybody wants to learn something, you go to YouTube. That's a fantastic resource. There are a lot of really amazing tutorials and videos on YouTube giving really great instruction, but there are also those that do not give really good instruction, and you cannot trace a pair of pants and use the front and the back as the same, okay? So you can't just trace the front of a pant and then just cut two and use that same pattern piece for the front or the back, unless you are built exactly flat on the front and the back. You know what I'm saying? Because you have different crotch curves. You have a different crotch curve for the front. You have a different crotch curve for the back. And so when you are just learning, how to sew, and you find yourself sort of browsing YouTube and you find a video, and you could find yourself making something that's not going to fit you or that doesn't really work well, because like I said, not all YouTube videos are created equally. So just make sure that the video you are following is giving you good instruction. And I know that if you're new to sewing, you probably don't know what is good and what is bad. But generally, if the video is skipping around too much, or if they're simply just tracing around one side of the garment and using the same piece for front and back, generally you're going to find yourself sort of stuck, like, what do I do next, right? Because they're sort of clipped and chopped and put together. So you want something that's going to really sort of help you along the entire project. Let's see. This is super basic. Every seamstress knows this. Do not use the same pair of scissors for your fabric and your paper. It will get dull. I use rotary cutters. I don't even use scissors. But even with my rotary cutters, I have blades that I use only for cutting my paper patterns, and I have blades that I only use for fabric. Let's see. Number 6, running before you walk. Leave vogue patterns alone. Don't try making a blazer, semi-fitted trousers, button-up shirts just out the gate. Okay, chill. Start with something loose fitting, something that's going to be easy, that you're not going to get frustrated with, so that the whole purpose is that you start to learn to sew and that you enjoy the process. Well, if you start trying to make a blazer or fitted trousers right out the gate, you're probably going to get really frustrated with yourself, and you're not going to want to continue your sewing journey. So in Sew It Academy, we start you with the very basics and we build on it. I have students that started with me 4 years ago when I first launched Sew It Academy that had never even seen a sewing machine, had no idea how to use it, and now are making coats and tailored blazers. We're working on a Chanel-inspired couture jacket this month in the Sew It Academy. So just take it easy. You know what I'm saying? Start with something that you're not going to get frustrated with. Elastic waist joggers, a loose-fitting dress, a tunic, something out of knit fabric, which could be great for newbies and not great for newbies if you're not, too familiar with how to sew knit fabric. So it really does depend. But for the most part, if you make something out of a knit, at least it's going to stretch some. Let's see. Stop buying fabric. And listen, this is from a self-proclaimed fabric hoarder. I had so much fabric, I didn't even know what to do with it. It was insane. I was just buying fabric every time that I wanted to go to the store. I would find fabric, I would buy it, I would bring it home. And my general rule of thumb is that I buy at least 3 yards of fabric because I know that with that I can make just about anything for my body. But the problem with that is you end up with way more fabric than you need. And then you become overwhelmed because now you have all this fabric and you have all these patterns and you're like, oh my gosh, I would spend more time on the floor trying to figure out what to sew because I had so much to choose from. And honestly, you spend a lot of money and you don't even realize it when you're just buying fabric because you like it and you don't have a specific plan for it. So now when I buy fabric, I have a specific project for what it's going to be. And I'm no longer just buying fabric because I like it. Especially if you are a newbie, you want to keep your costs low. So don't go buying fabric because you like it and not have something specific in mind for it. Let's see what else we got. Oh, not using your cutting guides. Okay, so this is for pattern sewing specifically. So in your pattern, right, in the instructions, it gives you a cutting guide. This tells you exactly how to fold the fabric in half with selvage edges meeting, how to lay your pattern pieces to get the most use out of that fabric. Remember, it's like playing Tetris. You have these guides so that it tells you if you have 1.5 yards of fabric or you have 2 yards, you need to place your pattern pieces like this so that it all fits and you can cut. Don't just fold your fabric in half and then start cutting out pattern pieces because one, you will most likely waste a lot of fabric and not have enough of that yardage that you bought because there is a method to the madness. So those cutting guides are really important, especially if you're new to sewing. What else? Oh, this is really important. Also with patterns, don't read ahead. I know that a lot of people get the patterns and they start to read the instructions and they read all of the instructions before they get started. If you are a seasoned seamstress, I totally understand that because that's what I do. When I get the pattern, I read through it, I look through it and see, okay, cool, let me get started. But if you are new to sewing, especially if you are new to using commercial patterns, I suggest not doing that because what happens is if you do not understand it, have already done it, or are super familiar with it, when you get to certain instructions, they're going to seem really, really confusing. And you're going to probably get sort of discouraged to do it. When a lot of times, it may not make sense as a standalone, let's see, number 6 pattern instruction. But as you're sewing, once you get to that part of the instruction, it'll make sense. But if you're just trying to visualize it, a lot of times you will get really confused and feel like you can't do it. And you might not even try the project because you have talked yourself out of it because you read ahead in the pattern instructions and didn't understand them. When in fact, it's not that complicated if you just go step by step. Once you get to certain pattern instructions that may have seemed confusing before, once you actually get to that step, you can sort of visualize what you've done to that point, look at the diagram, the illustration, and be like, oh, this is what they want me to do. So I always suggest that you don't read ahead if you are new to sewing. But if you're buying a Mimi G for Simplicity pattern, I always have a sew along video that goes with my patterns. So if you want to read ahead, by all means read ahead because you always have my video to walk you through all the steps. Let's see, pattern sizing. I have an entire course in the Sew It Academy on how to read patterns, how to choose your size, how to really understand the measurements and ease, how to grade between sizes, all that stuff. But for right now, I'm just going to cover something that I think a lot of people get confused with. You're going to buy the pattern according to the measurements on the back of the envelope, okay? But the finished garment measurements is actually written inside of the pattern on the tissue itself. So for example, for my bust, let's say that I bought the pattern based on my bust size being a 36. Fantastic. Depending on what that garment is, whether it's a loose fitting garment or a more fitted, semi-fitted garment, when you go to cut the actual pattern piece, on there it's going to have finished garment measurements. That includes the amount of design and wearing ease that was included in that piece. So let's say I bought the pattern based on my bust size on the back of the envelope, but the finished garment might say that finished size for my size that I picked could be 40 inches. Well, I certainly don't need that much ease, so I would cut maybe a size smaller. Now I know this can get really confusing and it does take sort of time, but I have that course in the Sew It Academy where I talk about demystifying commercial patterns, which is really helpful to so many people to understand that retail sizing is not the same as pattern sizing, that the size on the back of the envelope, if it's 8, 10, 12, 14, you might buy it because you're a size 12, but when you look at the finished garment measurements, you might say, well, I don't need that much room in my hips or in my waist or in my bust, so I'm going to cut a size 12 instead. So that's something that you really want to keep in your head, is to look at the finished garment measurements given onto the pattern tissue. They don't always give it to you, but for the most part, I always seem to find it. Let's see, number 11, expecting to know all things right away. This is something that I think a lot of people might become frustrated when you're sort of learning to sew, where you feel you should know a certain amount. Or let's say that you see somebody online who just started sewing and you feel you should know as much as they do. I'm still learning. I learn all the time, and I've been sewing well over 20 years. And I always find myself seeing something and I'm like, oh wow, that's new, let me try that. Or I'm working on something and find a new method of doing it. Or it's not something that you're going to learn everything at one time. So you just have to give yourself time to sort of get through all of the different things that you're going to learn, experiment. There's so many things that sort of come about as you're learning to sew, to fit your body, to work with commercial patterns. And so just allow yourself time to sort of learn all of those things. I have students in the Sew It Academy, like I said, who started and knew nothing. And almost 4 years later are still students, because they are constantly learning. We are always learning and evolving. So take it easy on yourself. And the last thing, number 12, is learn fitting. In the Sew It Academy, we do a lot of fit classes. I teach you how to fit your bust, your body, your waist, your hips, how to make adjustments, all kinds of things. And the reason we do that is because once you learn how to sew, you learn how to sew. But the one thing that is sort of always evolving is learning how to fit your body, because patterns are made for a specific person, right? And we are shaped very differently. So what is going to fit somebody right out of the pattern envelope might not fit you. You might have a shorter torso, a longer torso, a shorter crotch, a longer crotch, short legs, long legs. I mean, there's so many different things that as you learn to sew, you will also learn that you need to fit to your specific body. So learning to fit is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself. Take the time to learn it and practice it. And let me tell you, I am always learning new things about fit as well. And in the Sew It Academy, we do all of those things. But if you're learning on your own, which is great as well, there are a lot of different resources. I have a video on my YouTube channel about my favorite sewing books. I think at least 2 or 3 of those books on that list of that video are fit books, because it's so important. And you don't want to spend all your time making something, right? When you're learning to sew, you spend all this time making a garment that you really love, and then at the end of it, it doesn't fit you well because you haven't learned sort of the ABCs of fit. And you just really start with the basics, right? Start with the basics of fit, how to fit your bodice, how to fit your hips, how to fit your waist, how to join patterns from one size to the other, because I might cut a size 10 for my bodice, but I need to cut a size 14 for my skirt or my pants, because the difference from my waist to my hips is 10.5 inches. So I need to constantly be aware of those changes in my body and how I'm going to make those changes to the pattern. And once you start doing it and you sort of get the hang of it, it does become easier. But like I said, it's always evolving. So take it easy on yourself and don't go crazy on the whole fitting thing. Wrinkles are wrinkles. You're going to have pulls. You're going to have whatever. Like, relax. I talk about that in the my favorite books video also, to take it easy on yourself when it comes to the fit issues that you hear a lot of people talk about in the sewing community. So anyway, I hope that these tips will help you if you are new to sewing. And like I said before, if you want further instruction or you really want to learn some great fundamentals and build on your skill level, join the Sew It Academy. We have a free trial. You don't even need a credit card. You can log in, set your account, and check it out. Anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Peace.